Neil deGrasse Tyson said that flying cars are not realistic.
Why there'll never be flying cars?
Yeah.
We already have flying cars. They're called helicopters.
I don't agree with him. I'm not really in the point of convincing.
Doron Merdinger is the CEO of Doroni Aerospace, and he
Started with developing drone technology for the Israeli Defense Force. Then he generated $18 million for his dinnerware company. Eventually, he built a flying car prototype in his living room, and now that company is approximately valued at $200 million. You sold your house to start a flying car company. Why?
I started the project and then I ended up selling my house.
So was there ever a doubt in your mind?
There was no doubt about it. It wasn't easy, obviously, because I didn't have like $100 million in my bank account.
Walk me through that first prototype in your living room.
We started with an open cockpit of one person, but then we realized it's not a good business model, and we changed that to a two-seater, right? Aviation industry in general. It's over 100 years of using the same old technologies, right?
Wait, I was expecting more complexity. How is it so simple?
I saw at one point SpaceX, the astronauts sitting inside using only tablets. Can we put all of them in one joystick? The answer was yes.
30 Doronis are worth one helicopter. How would flying cars help in LA fire situations like that?
A sheriff helicopter crash, $15 million. So you can lose few if you send them out and they don't come out. I think the US is paying much more attention to human life than China. But the ones that are flying in China, you're basically sitting inside, you have no control of the aircraft, which is even scarier.
What are the different levels of anxieties that you have considered?
If there's a failure in one motor, and then that will from the top.
Mr. Doron, you sold your house to start a flying car company. Why?
Well, I didn't sell my house before. I started the project and then I ended up selling my house. Yes, that's the correct. Because I believe two things. I believe that this is a viable, realistic future. And the second thing, that I can do it. These are the two key factors that I keep asking myself throughout the process, 9 years into it, including now, and the answer is yes, is always yes. There was no doubt about it in terms of, my belief in this project and my ability to do it, obviously with the team around me.
And this is a question I genuinely wanted to ask you, because when, for example, someone says that, hey, I want to, in the financial world, want to create $1 billion company, it is still logically feasible, right? It's really ambitious, but feasible. But when you go on this journey, which is like, obviously you want to make something extremely successful, but it's in the realm of sci-fi, or it's in the realm of, you're literally going to create something out of thin air that people don't even use yet, or the society does not accept yet. So was there ever a doubt in your mind?
Nope.
Interesting.
There was no doubt. Obviously, there are challenges all the time. Financial challenge is always, a big thing for me specifically. But in terms of the sci-fi, well, let's start with, science fiction in general. I mean, there was a very known writer, Jules Verne, who wrote about flying to the moon much before, spaceship came over, and, diving 30,000 miles into the ocean, and before submarines were there. So there was never a doubt in my mind that this future is coming, and it always comes with a vision. For me, really, reality is in the eye of the beholder. What's in my head, I proved to myself so many times that what's in my head, I was able to manifest it, basically build it, create it, bring like-minded people to do it. So, and also, if you're looking at the industry in general, should I continue? I'm sorry if I'm not.
No.
Okay,
I'm here to learn. Yeah.
Yeah, okay, cool. So if you look at the aviation industry in general, it's over 100 years of using the same old technologies, right? I mean, aluminum frame, build out airframe, rivets and stuff, and then combustion engine. Really nothing is new in that sense. But what happened is that, there is a progress made in terms of, for example, the automobile industry. from, we're still driving four wheels, right, so far, but we moved to more and more to electric car. So I think this is a natural progression, natural evolution of the aviation. Obviously, there's a higher risk and higher standards, and then certification needs to be upheld, but still, I think we're in the right way. And definitely what we do is targeting that.
Right. And what I want to kind of go back to is the very inception moment, because obviously you have a past in, like developing drones when drones were not a thing because you were into the Israeli Defense Force. And that was able to help you understand, like the technicalities and everything, how to actually build so-called a flying car or an eVTOL. But I want to go to the inception in your first prototype. Like, you saw the drone, a kid was flying a drone, and you were like, hey, this is an inception moment, this can be built, right? So walk me through that thought process until your first prototype in your living room.
Okay, so it's really started with me looking at the future. I'm always mesmerized by creating things people never thought or where the future is going to go. And the flying car was never any doubt that the flying car is coming. We all knew it was coming. But everybody was thinking about, creating Jetsons and then other types of systems, of propulsion systems that are very complex, not really sustainable in our daily life. And this has to be practical. And here we see the drone technology improving, that kid, that eureka moment. You see that kid, sees how easy this is, being controlled, how maneuvered, by a kid with two joysticks. And I'm like, okay, so now we have the way that a flying car should behave. It's really about propellers, electric propellers. I mean, it's maybe it'll be a novel, technology for the aviation in general, to aviation, but in terms of technology, it's very old. I mean, electric motors in existence for generations and generations. Batteries, obviously, as well, they keep improving, and they're basically improving towards the market, right? I mean, the first iPhone, I don't remember, lasted half an hour, and now it lasts days, right? So, all these, once you have a vision in mind, all these technologies are converging into in one moment. So for me, when I saw it, I said, okay, this is how it's going to work, right? And I saw even, I think one time a TED was a presentation when they showed this guy with a drone that they put a wine cup on the drone and they're flying with the drone completely and the wine cup is full, doesn't spill a drop, right? And I'm like, this is it. It will be much more comfortable than flying a car, than flying a regular, aircraft. And it's also very easy to use, very easy to control. I do believe it's going to be a safer one. And so at that point, I was like, okay, how can, what's my next step? And really, my background started as a kid. I was always creating, building something. My older brother used to sick me when I was like 5, 6 years old around the house because I was always everywhere, dismantling thing, breaking thing, checking what's inside,
Yeah.
I think I already mentioned a couple of times that I had to deal with my mother.
Yeah.
Like, you can always, dismantle everything, just put it back before father comes home. So I was everywhere, and I was this, this curiosity, right? So, in high school, I studied microelectronics and computers. So I understand how systems like that work, okay? Add to that, breaking so many things before that.
Yeah.
And then Israeli Air Force. So when I approached that, I already approached it from a sense of, okay, these are the systems that needs to be in place. And I started looking for people, like-minded, crazy people.
Yeah, I remember about
talents.
that. In 2010s, you started assembling a team from different places in the world.
16 is 16 basically.
Oh, 16, okay.
16.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it wasn't easy, obviously, because I didn't have like $100 million in my bank account, so I can, promise everybody things. But the products were not there yet. The parts, like batteries and motors. So I had to basically come up with solutions, off-the-shelf solutions, or something with modifications.
Right.
And this is how we progress.
So when you're building your prototype for the very first time, like in your garage, like what's going on in your mind? Because what I'm trying to figure out is, it required some level of cost. It required some level of imagination. in that moment where you're like, hey, this is the future product that's exactly in my mind, and I'm just creating the first step in my garage? Or you were like, hey, let's create the first step and see where it goes, and it will eventually lead to this flying car that I don't even know will it like in this proper design that will exist yet.
Yeah, I get it. Okay, so I'll have to add that I've been riding motorcycles since I was 16 years old. Okay, so when I first had a look at it, the idea, I wanted to have something more organic, and we have 3D printers that I printed it. I started 3D printing over 20 years ago, really at the beginning of the beginning. So it was this technology is something that I used to work with. So what I've done is I started, designing with 2 aerospace engineers from the Ukraine, morphologies that we think will work. And the beginning there was just, an open seat, one person, with no cockpit. But from day one, we knew we were going to do ducted fans.
Right.
Because we knew ducted fans are so important for this technology, because when there's a human interaction, unlike a drone, when this thing you have, 40, 50 blade, carbon fiber blade inches blades, and then they have to spin the 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 RPM, they will cut you. So we knew it has to be ducted fans at that point. So the ducted fans is what we start from the beginning.
And this is what I find very fascinating, because I heard you talk about ducted fans multiple times, but when we understand theory, sure, you have a reasoning for it. But the moment I actually realized it was when I saw other companies, like there was a person who got into one of the cars, flying cars, and the blade was spinning, and I was like, if I was that person, and imagine I'm just like maybe on a call or whatever it is, or maybe I'm not paying attention, I get out of that car, the blade is right there, and I won't even visually see it because it's spinning so fast, I might literally cut my leg.
Correct.
So now the fascination there is you plan to create ducted fans, which is basically a covering for the fan itself from the very get-go, which is not the industry norm. But that also comes with its downsides, which is the airflow and the aerodynamics. So help me understand, you value the design, you value the functionality of safety, but also the functionality of aerodynamics. How are you able to combine all these 3 different aspects into one convergence and still maintain a level of not have a huge trade-off in all those different domains?
Yeah, maybe I will step, with your permissions, one step backwards. When a drone flies, let's take the regular quadrocopter, right? And it basically wants to fly forward or backwards or left or right. What it will do is it will increase the RPM, because it doesn't tilt the rotors, not the motors, and and there's no changing of the blade pitch as well. So basically, what it does is increase the RPM of the rear rotors, right, in order to move forward. But there's this tilt which is not comfortable. Okay, this is very nice for a drone. But when you have to have a person inside, going back and forth all the time, this is nausea. This is not comfortable. So we had to basically combine, first of all, a way of a drone, but flying with an aircraft, so you're not tilting. So we came up with, okay, we have, let's call them duct, we have, vertical propellers before we call them a duct, and basically propel you upwards. And then you have the 2 rear thrusters who will basically propel you forward. So it's called lift and fly, okay, at that point. So add to that the ducts. Now, the ducts bring 4 main advantages. First, they basically, if you do it correctly, you have about 40% less energy consumption, because all basically the airflow is directed downwards. And there's another couple of things. For example, at the tip of the blade, there are vortices. When you build it correctly, those vortices, this air goes downwards. So it's basically more efficient energetically. It's safer, as we spoke, for cutting the limbs of people close to it, but also from bird strike when you fly forward, which is a big innovation. Also flying, in urban areas or even next to trees. The third thing is basically it will be lower in noise levels, frequency and decibels, which we can control also by the blades and the design of the blades. And at the fourth, it just looks more compelling and looks sales, okay? So at that point, we had a couple of models, a couple of iterations. So as I mentioned before, we started with an open cockpit of one person, but then we realized it's not a good business model, and we changed that to a sort of a roadster, a two-seater, right? You sit next to another person, and then we added those thrusters in the back. It's called H1 P1. We knew it wasn't aerodynamically efficient at that point because we had those buckets in the front.
Okay.
But we knew we were going to have a solution. Now, this is where my world comes in. I always have that, internal, knowing. I don't know how to explain that. When I see a problem, even if I don't have a solution to it, I'm looking at it, I have that, okay, is it doable or not? And when it's doable technically, from my own experience, again, I'm 57-year-old, I always find a solution to that. I don't know how, I don't know where. Sometimes a person, sometimes it's me, sometimes but the solution comes in. And then what happened to us is the transition from the H1P1, we found a solution to the H1X, which what you see next to me here. So basically, the ducts are embedded inside the wings, and we find the right profile. Obviously, we're still perfecting it, but in aviation, or in aviation in general, there is always a compromise. Okay, for example, I want to have the longest range possible, so I create the biggest wingspan possible, and slim, airframe itself, the body itself. But then it's not practical because I want to park in a two-car garage. So it's a matter of it's give and take, and then we found something which is work for us.
Right, and I mean this is what I find fascinating is because, for example, if someone is optimizing just for one goal or like for the commercial purpose, tell me if my understanding is wrong and I don't have any understanding in this space. But if someone is just optimizing for one goal, especially in the commercial space, they have more leeway that, hey, maybe we can make the wings bigger, maybe, we can compromise on the design. But on the flip side, if you're actually aiming at high level consumers, because the pricing point for your, let's say H1X is in the range of 350 to 400,000, am I correct? So in that aspect, it's not only that people care about functionality, they care about everything, because it's like buying an iPhone. It's like, I want the iPhone, I'll pay extra premium for that, but it has to be functional, it has to be dependable, it has to look good, it has to give me a level of coolness. So is that something, the more I read about you, the more I find this fascinating, is like from day one, are you optimizing for all these different variables, or are you just optimizing for the main, let's say the 75%, which is the functionality, and then figuring out the design after that? Or is it happening all at once?
So the big question is, what comes, functionality or design, right? That's always somebody you ask. So my answer was always, they have to work together. For this to be perfect, and you mentioned the iPhone, and think about the iPhone, it works together perfectly. So it's functional and also design-wise. I don't believe in making things just for function without a design. Design always it's important. It's even on another note, before you approach a dinner, right? You see the food, you already taste it in your mouth before you even put the first bite, because and the settings and the people. So it's important, right?
100%.
Definitely for having such a very unique vehicle that we believe is going to, be a game changer, right? It's a true disruptive technology. You have to bring everything. You have to bring safety. You have to bring, aesthetics. You have to bring ease of use. Because this is going to be part of our life, right? So it's not like it's not just one thing. So we basically are thinking on everything, and to our. You can say to our surprise, but it's something that I always believe in. So for me, it's inherent. That's what I believe in. It all works together. So when you find a solution that aesthetics is usually what works. And I think the uniqueness of the H1X is that when I think we had that discussion before, it basically answers the two biggest questions. First, it looks like the sci-fi that we all was waiting for as kids, the way the design of it. But in terms of aerodynamics, it's also something that we see it's doable. So we can work with, with those forces and achieve our goals. So I think this is the challenge. It's not easy. It's very challenging, but so many passionate people are, taking part of it. And, we have a group of people who believe in that, obviously, not just me. And the more we take it forward, the more it's being focused to the market, to the people, to the use cases, to the functionality, and to the design of it.
Gotcha. And you had an interesting career because you basically went from designing dinnerware to building flying cars. And what I find interesting is, were you always that ambitious where you are like, I want to do something way bigger because it doesn't get something bigger than technologically disruptive than flying cars itself? Or were you like, this is like, one of those moments where you're like, all right, this is just a eureka moment and I'm going to do it? Or like, how did that transition work for you? Was it always there, or it was like a eureka moment and then you executed on that?
So there is this very inspiring speech by Steve Jobs, I think, How to Live Before You Die. He presented, I think it's at Princeton University, I'm not sure. And one of the things he was talking about connecting the dots. And how he went to study calligraphy at the university, and he just didn't attend to the school, right? He was just out, but in calligraphy, and this became the font of Apple. I was never a designer, not of tableware. I was never an engineer. I mean, I did study engineering. I think I'm a mix of a lot of things. If looking hindsight, that were able to bring me to that knowledge, to that level of where I'm at today. I mean, I did study finance and international business at NYU, right? I managed a big company, took it from 8 to 16 million, $18 million revenue for silverware production, and we did export, import.
Right.
I did study jewelry a little bit. I mean, but it's always something adding it, build drone as a kid. I mean, I did so many things in the Air Force. So all these things are adding to top of each other. And my father was a Holocaust survivor, basically. And the uniqueness of what he's done is that he was always a quality person. He used to, we used to live in an apartment. It wasn't a big thing. He came from very poor, obviously, and I lived a comfortable life, but everything that he bought was to the highest quality, and I think I got that from him, the ability to choose correctly, the ability to know this is good, this is not good, even with people that working for you, who can you trust, who can do that, who cannot, And it's with objects and with people, and I'm very thankful for having that heritage from my father.
Right, and what is so interesting, because so on the last the episode before this, I had Blake Eastman on. He has an AI behavioral robotics company, and it's this fascination with Steve Jobs, which everyone is his Steve Jobs' dad would make him look at the back of the cabinet where no one would pay attention, but making sure things are detail perfect, quality. It's that, what I have found very interesting, especially about you and also some of the greatest entrepreneurs who are they can think through first principles and create disruptive things on literally on a technical aspect, but also have this design aspect to them where they are so it's blending these two worlds, and I think it creates the best products where people want to consume it, but also on a functional level, it's just it's simple, it works, people get it. So transitioning that into your joysticks. When I looked at the model of, let's say, the first one or the H1X, it felt too simple. I was personally, let's say I have never seen a flying car, and I'm wait, I was expecting more complexity, which would make sense because I've seen the cockpits of helicopters and planes. So how is it possible as a layman? I cannot comprehend, how is it so simple?
Again, another inspiration, right? We're talking about inspiration. I saw at one point SpaceX, flying, and the astronauts sitting inside using only tablets, right? So, and also, Elon Musk, that he says, the question is, do we need to have everything? Is it important to everything? And if you look at it in a car today, okay, just not an electric car, regular car, you see so many things. And if you really ask yourself, do we really need that? Is it really important, And back to your question, the more parts, the more types of controls and information the pilots can get, the more complexity, the more points of failure. And the idea is to make it simple and just go look very simple on how a quadricopter flies. 2 joysticks, that's it. So can we, put all of them in one joystick? The answer was yes. And we tried that and we tested it and it's working for us. Again, we have our own autopilot that we use, and we tested it. And yeah, obviously it needs to be perfected, but there's not a lot that you need to add. Now, again, this is an all-electric machine, so there's less points of failure like in a combustion engine that you have, liquids go in electricity and rubber and aluminum and so many materials. It's really straightforward. And everything you add to it makes it more, and unlike regular driving like a car, every gram that you add in the air makes that thing much more costly, even, and add to the complexity of the aircraft. And really, there's no need for that.
Right. So basically, if someone was to explain this through analogy to a simple person, they would say this is a mix of a helicopter and a car. But I remember you mentioned that basically 30 Doronis are worth 1 helicopter, right? So how, in terms of use case in society, in different aspects, like, for example, even like in medical emergencies or, for shutting out fires. So for example, the LA fires that happened recently, worst incident. So how would, if Doronis were given in those situations, how would Doronis or flying cars help in LA fire situations like that?
Okay, so first of all, cost-wise, as you just mentioned, there was I think a year and a half ago, a sheriff helicopter crashed, I think Airbus, $15 million. $15 million, and the complexities of the pilot, how much the certification level the pilot needs to achieve. We're using a Doron H1X, how many you can buy, It's huge, so you can lose, in a way, few if you send them out and they don't come out. Second thing is you can always use it by remote control. You can send it, by remote control because it's like a drone, right? And you can save people and just take them 2, 3, 4, 5 miles out of the danger zone. And this is also to rescue them in a combat area or if they hiked or skied or whatever they are. So sending them out either by remote control or somebody inside, you can bring them in. Very cheap, very easy to use, very fast to deploy. It just makes sense, I think helicopter is a beautiful machine, definitely has a lot of cases. This is not here to replace the car or the helicopter or the aircraft or regular fixed-wing aircraft. What will happen is that this vehicle and maybe other vehicles like that will do what we call it's called Italian parking in a way. You go drive to Rome and there's a small spot in between cars and you push a little bit the front one and go push a little the back one and then you find your space. So in general, history shows that all forms of transportation started as niche players and it became one of the main ones. And I do believe this is what happened.
Yeah, this is so fascinating because I was thinking, was this your personal philosophy where you're like, hey, I'm going to create this sports-like, let's say, aspect to it and really price it high? Because obviously most people, it's very hard to convince the general public at first. But if you, let's say, frame it as that, hey, this is something really expensive for the average consumer, and make it really cool, and then it trickles down to, cheaper and cheaper versions the more you mass produce it, just like how Tesla did that.
Yeah, so when this technology was started, we're not sure about the level of certification, but the logic of it was because this is so easy to use, cost-wise, and we already see that this technology is improving. This will fit in terms of type of certification. So we took a chance, which until now proved to be a correct one, and we decided to do it, as I said before, a two-seater, right, a roadster. Now, what happened is that this level of certification of this kind of a design turned out to be a light sport aircraft certification, because at the beginning, this is how probably company like Joby started and other companies. But then what happened is they transitioned to the air taxi because they were able to prove business case and to raise billions of dollars. But behind that, what happened is it started this category under the LSA, under the Mosaic rules, started to evolve and basically create the pathway for these types of vehicles, which are already, in a way, the two-seater, flying in China,
Yeah.
and there's maybe another place in the world, but it's a concept. But here in the U.S. and also in Europe, in EASA, the counterpart of FAA, this category started to making its way and make it, it just makes more logic. It's just more sensible that this kind of product will come to the market.
Right. And by the way, before, I have a question around FAA, but did you see, do you know this streamer called iShowSpeed who's really popular right now?
Which one?
This guy called iShowSpeed, his name is Speed, stage name. So basically, he recently, I think maybe in the past 30 days, he went to China, and he's extremely popular across the world. And so he goes there and he tries this flying car. And it was kind of really fascinating because I already see people in public being very fascinated. The car was in air. So what I'm curious about is US generally tends to be on the forefront of things, or pretty much even better than China in certain cases, or just edge to edge when it comes to technology in different aspects. In terms of, let's say, especially eVTOLs or flying cars as we generally call it, is there a particular hindrance? Is there a level of conservatism? Is there skepticism? Is there fear for progress not happening as fast? Or is that something the general public is not even just aware of, but progress is happening in terms of regulations?
Yeah, so I think the latter. I think the US is paying much more attention to human life than China. I'm there to say that, okay? And that's why they're ramping the level of, the certification. It's so important. I don't see at that point, maybe I'm mistaken, but I don't see any Chinese eVTOL getting certification in the US, although it's publicly traded. By the way, the ones that are flying in China, although it's a two-seater, these are air taxis.
Okay.
And you're basically sitting inside. You have no control of the aircraft, which is even scarier than having a stick in your hand and control it.
Why would that be scarier?
Because you're sitting in a very cooked place, like you said before, a lot of propellers are outside, and then it takes you and you don't have any control. So you're sitting in an elevator, right, or some sort of a vehicle, which you don't know what it's doing, you don't know where it's going, and it's really scary to do that. I don't see that in the US happening. The two-seater, you have to have a pilot inside. Also at this point, for the air taxi, and also definitely for the two-seater eVTOL sports vehicle, right? The LSA one under Mosaic. So there's a big difference between having full autonomous and having it flight control. The first step will definitely be with the person inside, with the pilot controlling the vehicle. Because having it with autonomous brings another level of complication into that, and the idea is to remove that, to reduce that risk, not to increase that. So so the U.S. is more cautious, but it's more sustainable in that way because obviously we're always afraid of the first crash, and things will crash because every aircraft crashed, every car crashed. And the question is why, how, when? We have to mitigate it. We have to know what to do. We have to prepare ourselves and make that thing as safe as possible. That's why we're working in so many, levels of safety and redundancies, like the parachute, the wings, and everything that we do. This is why it takes more time, but it's more sustainable product, at least to my opinion.
100%.
To our opinion as well. Yeah.
You mentioned safety. Safety, like, when we sit in a car now, we are very used to it. I'm sure when car as a concept first came out, people were like, wait, I'm used to horses and now I'm going to go 60 miles per hour. That's crazy. And there's a level of anxiety. So there's different aspects to it, which is you as someone who is a creator of this product. You are thinking in very different dimensions and considering every single aspect. And as a consumer, we psychologically don't even know what we are processing, but there are different levels of anxiety that we might, possibly even consider. Even with the phone, like the battery is about to run out and I feel a level of anxiety that I don't even know. So I have to plug it in. So help me understand from the consumer's perspective, what are the different levels or types of anxieties that you have considered into building this product and eventually building redundancies around that?
Maybe I should start by saying that I built that vehicle for myself. I'm asking myself, would you fly it? That's the main question I will ask myself. And I was also the guy who flew it here, the first one who flew it, right?
Yeah, I saw that. That was so cool.
Yes. Yeah, so I'm basically putting myself on the line here, not just about financially, but also risk. So, taking that into consideration, I will basically do everything possible to check everything that we can, to make that thing safe. And there are multiple of safety levels, which I don't believe you can find in any aircraft today, definitely not a helicopter. Because in a helicopter, once the rotor is out or, and there's nothing, maybe if it's not functioning correctly, you could do auto rotation, but at the end of the day, you just fall down.
You just, yeah. And so what's fascinating?
We saw the horrible crash in New York, I think it was New York, yeah.
Yeah, that was a very recent clip.
This one is different, okay? So first, we have 4 ducted fans for vertical, and we built in a way that, and in each one there are 2 motors, coaxial counter-rotating motor, and if there's a failure in one motor, the other one will pick up the power and will basically balance it automatically without the intervention of the pilot, because again, the autopilot, again, is less complexities. Basically, this will basically maintain the integrity of the vehicle and the passengers inside. So this is one of it. The second thing is we have wings that will also give us a little bit of lift. We still need to study that, how far they can take us without, if there's a failure like that. This needs to be tested. But again, these are surfaces that can help us. Carbon fiber body, which is stronger, much stronger than aluminum. We're talking about like these technology exists for I don't know how many years in the Formula One, right? Carbon fiber monocoque. And then a ballistic parachute that will deploy from the top of it and basically will land the entire aircraft. These are very serious redundancies, safety levels that you can't find in vehicles today. And I call it a vehicle more than an aircraft, although it flies. So yes, obviously we need to test everything, but this is the goal that we're shooting for. Now, in terms of how it's going to roll out, the first customers are going to work with us, and we will select them very carefully. So we're not going to, even if you put the money and you're the first one, we will work with you very, very tightly and will allow you or work with you where you can fly, how you can fly, get all the telemetry, the data, everything that we need, and work with you to improve the vehicle. We do obviously our own testing before. And we continue to monitor the vehicle at your home throughout the life of the vehicle to ensure safety levels, that the battery is there, the motors are there, and other things, electronics and software is updated. So, yeah, it has to be very tight controlled.
Yeah.
phone, a better smartphone, whatever computer came out, which is the most expensive one. It's still the most sought of. People are buying it. Or interesting to buy.
Right. And so this is what I actually find very fascinating about, especially iPhone, but also products, great products in the world in general, which is people judge in the moment. So, for example, someone builds a prototype or someone builds something, and they're like, "Oh yeah, that wouldn't work, or that doesn't look good, or that's not functional." But depending upon the vision, upon multiple iterations and couple of years, you see this amazing product, polished, just how a sculptor sculpts something, and now people use it. It's functional. It looks really great in comparison to the first one, and the anxiety levels also have dissipated in the crowd because it's more widespread. You see, people using it and all that. That's very, very fascinating to me.
Maybe if I can add one thing, I heard a story that when the first cars came out, and people used to, horse and a buggy, right? So there was, I don't know, a bell, or somebody used to walk in front of the vehicle and say, there's no horse or something like that. So because people didn't know how this thing is moving, so they should be, paying attention to it. So at the beginning, obviously, it's not for everybody. There will be enthusiastic people can afford that. It will roll out gradually. But think about it. I mean, why wouldn't this thing be a success? I mean, there's really there's no reason why this thing would not be a success. There's all the yes there, all the tags, that this should be a huge success in the world. That most people will want to have one. From all functionality, design. This is always my why. Why? I mean, think about it. Compared to what's out there today, what this can help, what this can do. You talk to me about saving people, FEMA. You send a swarm of them to just rescue people before or after, a hurricane. This is a big thing. You cannot afford to send 30 helicopters, but you can send, 50, drones, 60 drones, or 80, 100, like a swarm, right? Work timely together. So, yeah, I mean,
And it's
part of it.
also in, like, from when you say that, I'm just thinking from, like maybe the government's perspective, or even, like, let's say the fire department's perspective. It's very hard for them to spend $15 million on one helicopter plus very hyper specialized pilot versus having for 30 drones or 30 flying cars and having normal individuals who can train. By the way, how much time does it take if I wanted to, let's say, buy one of the drones? I have never, let's say I don't even have a driver's license. So what would it take for me to get into a drone and go from point A to point B? What certifications do I need?
So first of all, there's certification of the vehicle, which is the light sport aircraft, and there's also a certification of the pilot, which until now, it was also a light sport aircraft pilot, which required a minimum of 20 hours, I think 10 plus 5. Sorry, 15 plus 5 hours, 15 training, 5 flight. We don't know yet the level of certification. We believe is going to be somewhere around that, maybe 20, 30. If you ask us, there's really not a need for too many hours like that because it's very simple, straightforward with just one joystick. The vehicle will not let you do critical mistakes like a regular helicopter can do or fixed wing, a two-seater LSA, which is a fixed wing, can do. So we believe it should be somewhere like that. Obviously, we will have to work with the FAA in order to help them understand how this thing, and then the certification will follow through.
Right. And given talking about the FAA, tell me if I'm wrong, but the FAA, I think, granted or like filed for like an 850-page law or something that they recently just confirmed. Is that something unusual in your space, or is this something now they are like, all right, we need to get ahead of this and make this happen? Because ultimately, by the numbers that I read, this is a $1 trillion industry by 2040, if I'm wrong, or?
Yeah. Somewhere like that, yeah. So the 850 pages for Powerlifter, which include also the air taxi. Again, the air taxi has much more convoluted, high-level certification, both for the aircraft and for the pilot, and it's not what we do. So it's from the LSA part, the Mosaic rule, we expect them to be released towards the end of 25, go to effect end of 25, 26. So we are, in line with that. In terms of complexities, again, this is totally different than an air taxi. In an air taxi, you have 4 or 5, people, commercial pilot that has to basically take them all the time back and forth. And this is not what this is vehicle intend to do or behave like that. So,
Right.
so we're good at that.
And also, I was like, watching this video. Do you know Chamat Pali Hapetya?
Nope.
So he is basically like the billionaire who owns Social Capital, and he had multiple eVTOL CEOs on the panel. And so they were mostly on the commercial side, and they were explaining in terms of air taxis that even if you wanted to go from point A to point B, you would have to get out of your house, let's say drive in a car, get to point A, then that point A to point B takes you to the air taxi, per se the flying car, and then from point B you again drive in a car or walk or whatever it is.
Yeah, yeah.
Your product makes basically point A your home and point B your destination. It could be a McDonald's in the future, it could be a hotel. So what are you getting that people are not getting? Or is it something which is just like different use cases, so it requires just different levels of thinking around the same same product but different use case, basically use cases? Yeah.
I think first of all, yes, you're right. What we do is the last mile solution, and the air taxi obviously do not solve that. We have been approached by even one company, I cannot disclose their name, that basically are working on a spaceship, and I know 2 companies are doing that, and they're basically taking off from an airport, let's say in Europe, and landing an airport in Tokyo. That's the plan, in 20 minutes. So they're getting out of Earth,
Yeah.
and doing this,
Yeah.
coming back. So they wanted the Doroni basically to be the point to point. So it's part of the service. Let's say you are a very high top level executive, you want to fly it from New York to Tokyo, you have a Doroni, 20 minutes to the vehicle, to the shuttle basically, boarding inside, 20 minutes of flight back, and 20 minutes from the airport to your meeting. So what people don't get, I don't know if they don't get, I think many people do get that, but it's just a process. It's on our shoulders basically to prove that this is doable, and it's just making those steps. Again, developing funding, certification, these are just putting the time and the effort and carry that thing with us until the end. And this is here what we are doing.
Right. And also, again, like going back to, I think I could be misquoting the name, but one of the Army rotors basically just vertically goes up, it shifts the motors forward, and then they go forward.
V-22 Osprey.
Yeah, Osprey. Yes. So you showed that, and what I find fascinating is there are a lot of eVTOLs of flying cars who are built on that exact same model, and you very consciously were like, hey, the less movements we can have, the less even steps we can have, the better it is. And obviously it makes sense on a functional level as well. So the more I learned about you, the more I find these, even though I don't understand it, I'm like, there are so many things that make me want to consider getting into that, because it's just easier. I can get out of this, and if there's a landing port in a hotel, I would just go into that. The fear of bird strikes is not there. The fear of all these anxiety and failures and these even noises of the rotor shifting forward is not there. So it's fascinating to me, why are other people not considering it? And even from the design perspective, it looks just really cool. It looks more futuristic than something that goes up and then shifts forward, and then there's 4 or 6 rotors just like a plane.
Yeah, so again, as you said, less moving parts every time, and I saw new concepts. of tilting rotors. And people say, oh, why won't you do tilting, rotors? You have to understand, when you do tilting rotors, first of all, you have to have another actuator, another motor, another system, which is heavier, more expensive, and prone to malfunction. Like in the Osprey is a very, very expensive aircraft to maintain because of those tilting. And when you're transitioning from vertical to horizontal, this is where you're most vulnerable. This is the critical point. And we don't have that here, because you take off like a drone and then you fly like an aircraft, right? So if there's any problem with your thrusters, you're always resting on your vertical ducted fans. So many people do get it. I think what happened with time, people were waiting for flying cars, and it's a good question. I think people were waiting for flying cars for generations. When banking on, Back to the Future like a DeLorean or the Jetson like jets, and it didn't happen. So people became, skeptic. They lost hope. But I think the drone technology, starts showing us, yes, it's sustainable, but it's not good as it is, the design, to flying what we do, to basically a flying car on eVTOL. And I think we found the best of all worlds in our design. And and I see people joining us. I'm getting emails. We had up another engineers and another director, and the more experienced people in the industry are having more faith in what we do, because they see how this is compared to the other models and design that just don't make sense. Again, it's time. It's on our shoulders to go all the way. Obviously, prove that it's working, and
Right.
and we're making those steps.
Right. And I want to go to the moment where, like, in terms of, like, something like this is going from the moment of selling your own house eventually to build this company, and then, making other investors believe in your cause, in what you're trying to build. It's not a small task. It's obviously, you're at a moment where, there's so much attention and so much, even money and investors and, all the progress. But help me understand, going from your garage to this valuation right now with all these investors, what was that moment where you were like, this is just like maybe an emotional process, or maybe it was really hard, or maybe it was just like, cool, like, we are just going to build this thing, and like, investors will come no matter what. It's just because our product is by default going to be amazing.
Yeah, again, the latter. I started doing that without having any intention to bring investors. My first years was like, I know it's doable, let's get that, let's start doing that. And we made a nice progress, a good progress. We were able to lift off the ground. It's a heavy, at that time, 643 pounds. Although it was not perfect control, but at least it was hovering. And then we were approached by investors who said, think about it. This has to work like a roadster. And then we changed from the XA to the H1P1, and we won the Florida Aviation Aerospace Forum. And this is when we started getting traction. And then, we started getting offers by very savvy investors, angels, who gave us, I don't know, $1 million, wanted to give us $1 million or 300 for a third of the company. It was crazy. And then we started crowdfunding, because crowdfunding was starting to pick up, and it was perfect for this kind of a technology. So I think things are moved. And with that, you can look at life again as connecting the dots, right? If we got maybe a big cash infusion, I don't know if we would come up with this design by now. I think this design came with a lot of pain and labor.
Okay.
And a lot of hurdles of, okay, what's to do, what's correct, what's not correct. Because when you have a lot of money, it's very easy, it's very comfortable, and you don't have the surviving mechanism at that point. And I think if I'm looking at myself, surviving all this time with the team and people, and it helped us perfect the vehicle. Rather than if we get like 1 billion, we have to already show something flying and the design is not there. I don't think I don't think the designs that are out there, most of the designs that are out there, I don't want to name names, are viable, are sustainable, are correct for this kind of technology.
Gotcha. And
And
yeah. Yeah, and so this is what I find fascinating, and that's so like the when you're saying that, I'm just processing that is like it kind of makes sense because it's like, for example, someone hypothetically, whatever they are trying to build, and if they have $0, literally, they have to figure out a creative way or like a divergent solution around that thing, because if they really want to make it work, they will make it work through partnerships, through whatever. But if someone actually has a lot of money, then they're just like, all right, let's just solve this, let's, it's that mechanism. Actually, it's such a fascinating thing. So would you say that actually gave you time to perfect your product? Because if you had the money, it would not even lead to something that is gone through these iterations and cycles and all this depth of attention to it.
yeah, and there was one point where we're raising funds, and when you're raising funds on social media, you need to show progress, and not always you have the right progress to show, unfortunately. But there was a lot of progress behind the scenes that you cannot show. So we were testing different design, different airframes. We did multiple iterations, maybe 13, 14, 15, I don't know. And we reached out even to other groups, specialized, outsourced, give us different, configurations that we work with. And we got to something, and my team, the marketing was like, let's show it, because we need to show progress. I says, no, I don't feel comfortable with that. We had a nice design, but it doesn't show. I don't feel that this is going to be the right one. We tested. It doesn't give us the perfection in terms of specs, in terms of range, and in terms of power consumption and multiple of things. And then we were holding on, and it was tough because we were very short on money.
Right.
And we needed to show progress, but I think it paid off because we came up with this one, which is basically something that we do believe that this is working. Obviously need more tests, but yes, we already showed the micro flying of it, and we're able to control the flight and it won't work like we wanted to do.
Right. And so I have a genuine question for you. It's like a trade-off that you are making, that hey, I want to perfect the details before showing it to the world, but showing a good product to the world, or even like, let's say, a half-baked product does get you attention when something is so disruptive. So how are you balancing in terms of like, sure, we need to show people something so we can get more funding, but at the same time, you do want to make something detail oriented, which is, just great itself. So if, for example, as a thought experiment, if you were to go just like really extreme, hey, I'll make the most detailed product and maybe I'll just take 20 years to do that, then that's a bit too late. If you show something really scrappy, but it's like people don't even understand it, it's too early. So how are you balancing that in your head?
It's a very tough question. I'm asking them always personal questions. For me, it's being truthful to myself first. Do you believe in that? It starts with a belief. If I don't believe in that, I'm not going to do it. It really starts in my essence. Otherwise, I wouldn't be able to sustain doing what I'm doing. And again, another presentation by a very big person, Jim Carrey. He has this. He talks about his father. That his father was a happy guy. I think he was a funny guy. He played the violin, I believe so, and he decided to work as an accountant because he thought that this will bring money. And then suddenly one day, he was out of job, and they were living in a tent. And he learned from that. Jim Carrey learned from that there's always a risk in what you do. So if you want to be sustainable, do what you love and have passion the most. So I'm always asking myself, am I passionate with this? Do I believe in that? Does it resonate with me, both, heart and mind at the same time? A gut feeling, whatever you want to call it, and it's hard. I was never able to tell myself lies. I don't believe in that. So I'm always asking myself, is it correct or not correct? I'm not saying I'm 100% sure, 100% correct, definitely not, but at least with myself, I want to be truthful the most I can. And then convey that to the people that are working with me, asking them questions, get the feeling what they feel, really try to understand. Do you believe in that? No. I don't want half-baked truth here. I don't want to be politically correct. I really want to know.
Yeah.
And I'm addressing it from different angles. And if the guy wasn't, it was like I'm asking another guy, and then again and again, until I feel, okay, this is it. Prove to me, show me the numbers, whatever, why, convince me, playing devil's advocate with myself, with other people. That's what I'm doing all the time. Sometimes I'm nagging them too much, and I'm apologizing. But this is the way I believe in doing that,
Right.
And it's like a theory, right? I mean, there's a theory, and you try all the time to contradict it. And
Steelman
if you're
it.
not able to contradict, sorry.
Steelman it. Basically, just disagree with your own thought processes so that you know that you're not deluding your own self.
Exactly. And if you're not able, that means it's viable, right? So this is all the time the things that I'm doing. It's challenging my own assumptions, at every moment, and living with these two voices in my head all the time.
What's so interesting is like when you say that you're kind of nagging your team, even you label it as nagging, but I think that's like a crux of all the greatest creators, where they know that push needs to happen, that they have to like over communicate or like really be a bit OCD about certain things. And most people socially we are not used to that. Socially we are like, hey, you told me this thing twice, like I get it now, don't tell me more. But I think especially in your case, where like I'm just learning when you say this, is like you have to push for it, because ultimately it is that difference and that detail and that level of care, so to say, is what makes things great.
Yeah, I learned not to compromise.
Yeah.
I learned not to compromise.
Yes.
And my father always used to say, something similar to that. He used to say, I'm never rich enough to buy cheap. So, if you do something, I do it with my whole heart. I don't compromise in what I do. I never compromise in what I do, never. Because then if something doesn't work, it was like, then guilt comes in. You should have thought about it. Did you buy it? And no. So I'm turning every stone, every question. Something is not clear, I'll check again until, okay, are you okay now? Do you have all the information at this point? Obviously, it might be wrong, but at least at this point, have you done everything that you can and checked, right? So then moving forward, when I'm at the next step, and if this was not right or whatever, I never look at it as a mistake. I don't see mistakes. What I see is a progress of a learning progress. And this is how I have kids and team members here. And it's not a mistake. Have you checked that before? Okay, so you've done everything you could at that point. It's not a mistake. It's a progress. Think about a motorcycle driver, the one from MotoGP, right? For him to be the best motorcycle rider, he will have to check all the time the edges, how much he can lean into the curve, right? And at one point he will lean too much and it will slip away. Was it a mistake? No, I don't think so. It's a learning curve. If you're hammering yourself as a mistake, then you carry guilt. And then it's another burden that you have. I don't have any guilt like that. I never do, because I know I did everything I could.
Right.
If I will, perish the thought, will not succeed in my endeavor, whatever, I mean, I did everything I could. I've been honest with myself, with everybody around me, and I was able to communicate that to the best of my abilities. But this is who I am. This is what I bring, and this is maybe, again, to the safety levels and to the levels of details that we're talking about. This is how we see things, really, until the level of the nuts and bolts, right? And we don't see too many of them because of the carbon fiber, but still, yes, there will be.
Yeah, you mentioning about the nuts and bolts is interesting, because you guys are eventually going to go into production, and because of your nuts and bolts, even something that small, like which is like you can hold it within your fingers, is if the more different. I learned this. I didn't know about this, and I have no association with anything of that sort. But even having different types of nuts and bolts makes your production a bit more complex. Help me understand why something so small can be such a huge hindrance eventually.
Well, I mean, you can build entire aircraft and then you have a screw missing, you can't finish it, right? I mean, it's not like during the COVID where they sold cars which were not complete because they didn't have any chips at that time. This is different. This is, this will not stand on the side of the road if it can't, this will fly, so it has to fly, it has to be perfect. Everything has to be perfect inside. It's the type of carbon fiber weaving, the type of residues, the type of magnets that are used, the wire, the connecting parts, like in life, the toughest thing is how to connect, parts, amalgamate, put them together. It's like between friends, a husband and wife. This is the hardest part.
Right.
How you put them together to work. So for us and then you have to control the supply chain, right? And make sure that you're getting the quality on time. And it's the next level of details, of challenges. But I mean, it's been done before. It's not science fiction. It's not rocket science. It's been done, right? So if it's been done, we will do it.
What I find very fascinating, and I'm like, even in action and even with your past and businesses, like you have this polymathic and 3D mind. Most people cannot even comprehend. Like I remember you previously said that, hey, I can basically just see what I'm kind of creating, this 3D image in my mind. Help me.
Always.
Yes, so help me understand what that looks and feels like for you, because I'm sure even in this moment, you are able to do something in your head that most people cannot even comprehend. Help me understand that process.
Oh, maybe I will take you to another level that is something that I believe in spiritual levels. I believe that we are all conduits, that we came here to do something. This is my philosophy in life. Everybody is gifted, with something. Somebody has a muse, you can, hear music or create the music, and that's wonderful. I never thought of myself as really, I mean, I'm a creator, I create, but I didn't create, I'm not creating anything that wasn't in existence before. Maybe it goes in spirituality, maybe quantum physics, but I'm here basically to bring to our physical reality things that's already were created in the different levels, okay? So when I see those things, you can always ask yourself, what is reality? Is reality the things that we communicate with our five senses, or is really what we see in our heads? And every beautiful invention was first in somebody's head, right? So, I'm blessed to be able to see that in my head, and I'm able to zoom in, zoom out. And when somebody talks to me about a part, about how this thing, I already see that thing turning in my head and moving from different directions, spinning. I can zoom in, zoom out, think what material is going to be made, what's the production, fabrication process, and the technologies that are made.
This is so fascinating because this condition that you're describing right now is called hyperphantasia. Do you know about that?
No, I have no idea about it.
Yeah, so I think that people who have hyperphantasia, or like sometimes what happens is someone is dyslexic, or like maybe they have slight traits of autism. Maybe sometimes people who have ADHD, like people who are on the spectrum.
I do have Asperger in two sides, two different types. I was told.
I'm so curious because I'm very fascinated with how people fundamentally think on a neurological level. How does your help me understand that?
I mean, the first time I remember it, I used to wake up at night as a kid. I had an idea and had to do it. If I do it during the day, I didn't have a solution. Can wake up at night, and today I'm looking at it as I'm able to tap into this vast knowledge of information. The way I do it is I defocus my mind. I'm not trying to focus, I'm trying to defocus. I'm basically releasing the thought process in order to absorb the information, absorb the information, and then I'm able to see clarity. When I, develop parts, this unique tableware many years ago, I did not even know what materials I'm going to use. I did not know the fabrication process. I just had an image in my mind, And then I believe in my confidence, my confidence level that I'm able to be able to bring it to reality. I will be able to understand which materials and then what the fabrication process. And it's complex more when you do multiple of materials trying to create one unified theme. But again, add to that, what I learned in studying microelectronics, computers, and other things like drone technology. So I'm able to put them together. Again, connecting the dots. And I'm so happy I have so many people to inspiration like Steve Jobs. And it's amazing to have those people.
Right.
And Elon Musk, obviously.
Right. So, like, even Elon Musk describes, like, for example, I was reading about him. So he describes his brain as basically an equivalent of a graphics card. And when I learned about you, I was like, yeah, there is no way you're just thinking on a 2D logical plane. No, obviously, like, you have created 3D objects throughout 3D printing, all that stuff. So it's like you're able to simulate, basically run AutoCAD simulations in your brain.
Exactly. Yep.
So like, there's Temple Grandin. She is a scientist, and she also is on the autistic spectrum. And this is what her entire thing is like, she's able to run these simulations. Like, this is something I relate to so hardcore because I used to feel crazy. But I'm like, no, it's like you can run 3D simulations in your mind and perfect it and again. And then if you have the logical capabilities, then you can. I'll tell you what, like Ray Dalio, he said this about, I think, Steve Jobs and even some of the best people, is they're able to see the big picture, which is the imagination, but come back down to the minute granular details.
Yes.
And I think that is where you're operating, and it's just like the confluence of design and technicality, fascinating. Now, I have two last questions for you. There are naysayers in your industry. Naysayers who are not just the average person, but people who are very well educated, very well accomplished, experts, so to say. So, for example, Neil deGrasse Tyson, he said that flying cars are not realistic. Not to spur anything, but what do you have to say to people who don't understand what you are building?
Well, I have a lot of things to say about Neil deGrasse that I don't agree with him. But I'm not gonna. It's not here to this to this conversation. First of all, there's so many naysayers in every technology that came before it came out. So it's already a known fact that people resisted, people didn't agree, people didn't believe. I mean, go to Henry Ford, right? I mean, he says, if you let people do what they want to do, they'll still be in the horse and buggy. So, it's not my job to prove to people like Neil deGrasse, because on the other hand, there are thousands, or maybe hundreds of thousands of people who do believe in what we do. I believe that once we are, achieve the final, flying one that we have, that we're working on, people like Neil deGrasse will say, okay, fine, it's doable. But I can tell you, I'm not really in the point of convincing. I mean, we have over 600, I think about 600 pre-order requests, and we have over 3,000 investors, and so many people are for it. And I think people are very passionate, are long waiting for this flying car. It's maybe if I can compare it, it's people were waiting to fly in the moon. Once the U.S. landed, people on the moon, it was inspiring. I think people are waiting for these kind of inspiration moments, and our goal is basically, to bring that to reality. And so
yeah.
So when this is out, I will definitely offer Neil deGrasse a ride if he's interested to do. But he can always do it in China already, so he doesn't need me.
Right. And for the last question, if I had to ask, what is the best advice you would give someone who is just starting out?
The first advice, the main advice, is to ask yourself, do you really believe in it? Write it down. Write everything. Don't talk about fear. First of all, talk about belief. Fear will always be your friend next to you. You will have to write it out. So first, do you believe in that? check your friends, whatever. Ask all the toughest question. You have to, dig deep inside. The second is, do you believe in yourself that you can do it? And ask all the tough questions. Confront fear first. Fear will always accompany you. So you have to confront it first, okay? You have to know it's going to be there present throughout the journey. And the closer you get, or the more progress you make, the fear is going to be huge. And you have to be prepared that it will get you to a point and places that you wouldn't even believe. I mean, it's like, it's uncharted territories. I myself all the time find myself in uncharted territories of fear. A lot of fear, I mean, it's, I have a family, I have to take care of, team members, I have investors, it's not easy, but I'm always asking myself, do you believe in what you do? Do you believe in yourself? Are you, and I know myself already, again, 57 years, a little bit. So if my answer is yes, then I can move forward. If not, I can't move, but it was always yes, so I move forward. But the fear is always present. You have to know it's there. But it's, there's the 3 Fs, right? Freeze, fight, flight, But you have to know, this is it. It's not going to make you, it's not your decision maker. Your decision maker should be through belief, through love, through all these good vibrations, not through fear. Fear is something that will accompany you. You have to get used to it. It's your friend, it sits next to you here. You call it driving a shotgun, I think it's called. So riding shotgun, yeah. So this is it.
Perfect. That was awesome. That was amazing. Thank you. I really hope, I'm looking forward to your progress. It's like the coolest thing. Look, I'm being dead honest right now. Like, I'm from some city in India. Like, obviously now I'm in Canada, Toronto. But seeing something like this is something you possibly see on some random YouTube video, and you're like, yeah, that's animated. It's not real. And talking to you, it's like, it feels the future is here. It's just that the most of the world does not recognize it yet. So I'm really
true. This is exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
I think I'm that kid who basically the story. I don't remember the story that there was the king that walked naked, that he thought he has this new clothing. And I'm that kid who says the king is naked. So I'm like, oh, I always saw different things. I just wasn't powerful enough to myself as a kid to say, okay, I see different. This is the right way, and people don't understand that. But when I grew older, I said, okay, I trust myself here. And you have to trust yourself at one point. Maybe this is another advice. Yeah.
Gotcha. Well, that was awesome. I'm so rooting for your I'm just looking forward to your progress, all the updates and everything.
Thank you, Nama. Thank you. Appreciate that. Thank you so much. Have a good one.